My name is Ryan, and I turned 36 the same week this all began. I've been married to Madison for 8 years, 10 if you count the time we spent dating in college, though now I wish I hadn't. We met in our junior year at university, and I fell hard. She was sharp, charming, always the brightest light in the room, and she had this way of making you feel like you were the only one who mattered. For a while, I thought I was. We got married young, just a year out of school. And while it wasn't always easy, I truly believed we had something solid. I supported her through 2 failed startups, late-night study sessions for her MBA, and her dream to open a boutique design studio, a dream I helped fund with a good chunk of my inheritance after my mother passed. I never once asked her to pay me back. I was all in, but now looking back, I realize I was just playing a part in a story she had already written the ending to. It happened on our anniversary, our 8th. I remember it because I had just come home early from work, arms full of groceries and candles, planning to cook dinner myself. Madison always joked that I couldn't cook to save my life, but I wanted to surprise her this year. She'd been so distant lately, and I figured maybe I hadn't been paying her enough attention. I was wrong. So wrong. I lit the candles in the dining room, pulled the wine from the fridge, and just as I was setting the table, I heard voices outside on the balcony. She didn't know I was home yet. I peeked through the sheer curtains and there they were, Madison and her best friend Ashley, both holding glasses of rose, backs turned to the door. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I really wasn't. But when I heard my name Ryan, something just made me freeze. Madison laughed a little too loud. She said, "He's just my backup plan. Ash, honestly, I'll leave once I'm stable. I'm almost there." They clinked glasses. My stomach dropped. I don't remember much else of the moment, just this ringing in my ears. I stood there staring at the table I had set, the candles flickering, and something inside me quietly, permanently cracked. I didn't storm out. I didn't confront her. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there frozen in place until they came back inside and she looked at me like nothing had happened. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're early." I kissed her forehead and told her dinner was almost ready. That night, I served her pasta and watched her laugh at something on her phone while I chewed slowly, forcing a smile. I remember staring at her, thinking, "You have no idea I heard you." And that strangely gave me clarity. There was no point in begging, no point in yelling. She had made her choice. I just hadn't made mine yet. For the next 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I took her to brunch that weekend. I asked her how the studio was doing, listened as she talked about the new client she signed, the assistant she hired, the networking dinner she was planning. I told her I was proud of her. I even paid the invoice for the new business card she had printed, all while quietly gathering everything I needed. What Madison didn't realize was that the business account she used for her studio, it was in both our names, a decision we'd made early on so I could co-sign the lease for her commercial space when she couldn't qualify on her own. I also still technically owned the condo we lived in. It was my mother's, left to me in her will, but I had let Madison feel like it was ours. I didn't correct her when she told friends it was her place, too. I didn't even correct her when she suggested putting it on the market to level up to something bigger, as if it was a mutual asset. I let her believe she had leverage, and I waited. The thing about Madison is that she's careful, calculated, even. But she's also arrogant. She thought she had time. She thought I'd just keep paying for everything, staying in the background. The dependable husband she could discard when she was ready. But I was paying attention now. And every little detail, every oversight, every assumption she made, I quietly added to my growing mental file. I started meeting with a lawyer. I moved some of our joint funds into a trust, legally above board, all documented. I revoked her access to the business credit line. I even had a quiet conversation with her assistant, letting her know the studio's lease wouldn't be renewed and that any future paychecks would have to come from Madison's personal account. No drama, no confrontation, just slow, quiet, surgical steps. Then came the moment that let me know I was finally being felt. 2 weeks after our anniversary, I got a message on Instagram from Ashley. She never messaged me. We were civil, but not close. It just said, "She's panicking. What did you do?" I didn't respond. I just stared at it. For a moment, I felt this tight knot in my chest start to loosen. Not because I enjoyed seeing Madison squirm, though I won't lie, there was a dark satisfaction in that, but because for the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own life again. I wasn't just someone's safety net. I wasn't a stepping stone. That night, Madison came home from a yoga class, visibly tense. She didn't even take off her sneakers before blurting out, "Did something happen with the business account? I think there's an issue." I shrugged and said, "I'll look into it in the morning." She stared at me like she didn't quite recognize who she was talking to. And that was the moment I knew she was beginning to sense it, the shift. That her plan wasn't as airtight as she thought. That maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the backup anymore. But I didn't press. I just smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and said, "Don't worry. Everything's being taken care of." And it was just not in the way she expected. There was still more to come. She just didn't know it yet. The next few days felt like watching someone try to hold water in their hands. No matter how tightly Madison tried to grip her world, it kept slipping through her fingers. It started with the card declines. Nothing dramatic at first, a declined Uber ride, a failed charge at the grocery store. She brushed it off with a forced laugh, blaming the bank being weird again. I didn't say anything. I just poured her a glass of wine and nodded. Then came the emails. I had our shared business accountant send her an official notice about the revoked co-signing rights and a recommendation to hire independent counsel. I didn't even sign it. It came from the firm, detached, cold, unmistakably real. She brought it up that night with her usual passive-aggressive tone. "Babe, did you see this email from Greg? He said the business line's been restricted and that you signed something." She was stirring vegetables like nothing was wrong, but her voice was cracking. I looked up from my laptop, gave her a calm smile, and said, "Yeah, I'm shifting things around. It's just time for a different structure. You've been saying you wanted more independence, right?" I said it like I meant it, like it was a gift. She stared at me a beat too long before muttering something about needing to check the studio's books. The next day, I removed my name from her utilities and redirected every joint payment to her personal account. Quietly, officially, I canceled the autopay on her leased car, the one I'd been covering since she restructured her cash flow 6 months earlier. That Friday, her gym fob stopped working. I saw the notification hit my phone while I was in a meeting. I turned off the screen and smiled to myself. Madison didn't confront me directly. Not at first. She was still holding on to the illusion that she could salvage the situation, that this was just a glitch in the matrix and not a reckoning. But I watched the mask slip, slowly at first, then all at once. She started asking questions over dinner, like she was interviewing me. "What are you working on these days? Have you been talking to a lawyer? Are you upset about something?" Each one felt less like concern and more like a fishing expedition. I never gave her bait. I just smiled and said, "Everything's fine, Maddie." By the second week, she was no longer hiding her anxiety. I came home one night to find her sitting on the couch, wine untouched, the TV playing to no one. She didn't look up. She just asked, Are you leaving me?" It should have stung. It didn't. Not anymore. I sat next to her, leaned forward, and said, "Do you want me to?" She turned, clearly caught off guard by the question. I held her gaze. She blinked, confused, and didn't answer. I waited 10 seconds, 15, still nothing, just silence. So I stood, kissed her head, and said, "I'll be in the office. Let me know if you need anything." That night, I moved more files from our shared drive into a private folder. Backups of everything: texts, financial statements, receipts, emails. Madison had a habit of making promises in writing, and she always assumed I wasn't keeping track. But I was. I had every last piece cataloged. My lawyer was already prepping a plan: the business withdrawal, the property exit, a financial severance offer that would leave her enough to keep her boutique afloat. Barely. No court battles, no drama, just clean lines. I didn't want revenge that made a mess. I wanted silence. I wanted finality. But that's when Ashley messaged me again. This time, it wasn't just a short panic text. It started with, "I'm so sorry." She followed up a few minutes later with a long block of text, and I stared at it in disbelief. She confessed that Madison had been talking about phasing me out for over a year. Apparently, I was part of some plan, a transitional safety net. Her words, not mine. Madison had been quietly talking to a guy she met at a startup event. A VC who showed interest in her business and her. She'd been laying the groundwork emotionally, financially, socially, to jump ship once her studio hit a milestone. The moment she could fund herself fully, she'd file for divorce. Clean break. She assumed she'd keep the condo because Ryan won't fight me on it. Again, her words. Ashley said she only told me because she didn't want to get dragged into a mess and she was scared Madison was about to implode. She's unraveling, Ashley wrote. She thinks you're about to pull the plug and she has nothing to land on. I think she knows you heard her that night. Just be careful. I sat there reading it over and over. Not because I didn't believe it, I did. It all made sense now, but because part of me was still shocked by how methodical Madison had been. This wasn't a failing relationship. It was a heist, a long con. And I'd been the mark. But now the script had flipped. I didn't respond to Ashley. I didn't confront Madison either. Not yet. I wasn't done. There was still one piece left to move, the condo. I pulled out the paperwork that night. I had kept it in the safe, the original deed, the transfer documents, the proof that I had paid the property taxes alone for the past 6 years. Her name was never on it. I just never brought it up. No need until now. I called my lawyer and told him to begin the process. Quietly. No eviction, just a formal notice of relocation. I wouldn't kick her out. I'd just sell the place. I had already found a buyer, a former client of mine, looking for a private sale in our neighborhood. We'd met once for coffee. He was interested, very interested, and with the current market, I was looking at a tidy profit. By the time Madison noticed, it would be a done deal, but I didn't expect what happened next. The following afternoon, while I was at work, she called me 3 times in a row. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts, "Can you come home? It's urgent. Please, Ryan. I just got a letter. Are you selling the condo?" I didn't respond. That night when I walked in, she was standing in the foyer, face pale, hands shaking slightly. You're selling the place?" she asked, holding up the letter from my attorney. I looked at her, calm even. "Yes." Her voice trembled. "Without talking to me?" I tilted my head. Why would I need to? That was the moment it hit her, really hit her, that she was never in control, that she wasn't playing chess. She was standing on the board. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. And in that stillness, in that heavy, gasping silence, I finally said what I'd been holding in since the balcony. "I heard you." Her knees buckled just a little. Not enough to fall, but enough to show the impact. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just stood there steady and let the truth hang in the air between us like a guillotine. Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for the right words. But all that came out was a shaky, "Wait, how much did you hear?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence said everything. And the way her face drained of color told me she understood. The balcony, the rose, the clinking glasses, I heard all of it. She took a step toward me. "Ryan, I was just venting. You know how Ashley is. We say things. We were drinking. It didn't mean anything." That was her first move, minimize. Pretend it was just harmless banter, a joke, a slip of the tongue. But I stayed quiet, letting her dig herself deeper. "I mean," she continued, forcing a laugh, "I'd never actually leave you. You know that, right?" I was just frustrated. And God, Ash gets in my head sometimes. "You know how she is." I raised an eyebrow. "So, you didn't mean it?" She exhaled like she'd been waiting for that question. "Of course not. You're my husband. I love you. You've always been there for me." I nodded slowly. Right. I've always been there for you. That landed harder than she expected. Her lips parted again, but now the panic was starting to seep in. She realized I wasn't buying it. Worse, I wasn't even arguing. And Madison doesn't do well with quiet defiance. She thrives in chaos. In debates, she can twist. Conversations, she can dominate. But when she's met with stillness, with calm certainty, that's when she begins to unravel. Her tone sharpened. You're being dramatic. This is our home, Ryan. You're just going to throw everything away because of one stupid thing I said when I was tipsy? I finally met her eyes, steady and firm. No, I'm throwing everything away, because you meant every word and you were never planning to tell me. She scoffed, stepping back. So that's it? You're just going to sell the condo and walk away? You think that makes you some kind of hero? I don't want to be a hero, I said, my voice quiet. I just don't want to be your backup plan. That cut through the noise like a blade. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Real or fake, I couldn't tell. I didn't care anymore. She turned away, then turned back. You can't do this. You can't. Where am I supposed to go? My studio lease is tied to this address. My stuff is here. Everything. And none of it, I said, was ever yours to begin with. That stopped her cold. The condo was in my name. The studio's lease was under the LLC I owned. Even the design software on her work computer was paid for under my business license. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about correcting the story. She had been living in a fantasy where I was the background character. I just gave her a reality check. She stood there, breathing heavily, jaw tight, but said nothing more. I walked past her, calm and quiet, heading into the office. I could hear her pacing the living room, muttering under her breath, her voice rising and falling like she was trying to rehearse the perfect monologue. But none of it mattered anymore. Later that night, after she went to bed, or at least pretended to, I opened my inbox and found another message from Ashley. This time, it was a screenshot. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up in the guest room with the door locked, the documents pulled up on my laptop, reading every line she had signed in my name, every email she'd faked, every digital signature she'd created using an old PDF of my initials. She hadn't just lied. She had built an entire shadow life with my name as the foundation. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. When Madison walked out in her robe, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she froze at the sight of me. Maybe it was the look on my face. Maybe it was the thick manila folder in front of me. She didn't speak. She sat down slowly. What is that? She asked, her voice low. I slid the folder across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. Her face paled by the third page. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked up at me, fear blooming across her face like wildfire. You went through my files, she whispered. No, I replied. You used my name to open a line of credit without telling me. That's fraud, Madison. She started shaking her head. No, I didn't. I mean, I had your info on file already, and I thought. You thought I wouldn't find out, I cut in. Just like you thought I'd keep paying your bills. Just like you thought I'd fade into the background while you lined up your next move. Ryan, please, she said, standing suddenly, her robe slipping from one shoulder. We can fix this. I was going to pay it back. The business just hit a rough patch. Don't, I said firmly, standing too. Don't insult both of us. You weren't going to pay it back. You were going to leave. She paused, breathing hard, eyes glassy. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did, I said. And I'm done. I picked up the folder, tucked it under my arm, and turned to leave the room. She followed me to the hallway barefoot, pleading. Now, Ryan, wait. Please, just listen. I got overwhelmed. I made a mistake. I turned back, looked her straight in the eye, and said the words I'd been holding in for weeks. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Her face crumpled, and for a brief second, I thought I saw regret. Maybe real, maybe not. But it didn't matter anymore. I walked into my office, closed the door, and called Daniel. I want to move forward, I said. Full separation. No mediation. If she wants to fight it, we go public. He exhaled, like he'd been waiting for this. I'll draft it up. The divorce papers were served that Friday. Madison didn't scream. She didn't throw a fit. She just went quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in a room like a storm cloud before the thunder. I gave her 30 days to vacate the condo. I let her keep the furniture, the studio equipment, even the car. Though I made sure the lease was transferred into her name before I handed over the keys. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clean breaks. It wasn't until the move-out date that she finally broke. She stood in the hallway with a single suitcase and one last plea in her voice. Ryan, are you really going to let this end like this? I looked at her. Really looked at her one last time. The woman I'd once thought I'd grow old with. The one I had loved so deeply, I sacrificed pieces of myself just to keep her happy. This ended the night you called me your backup plan, I said. She flinched, biting her lip. Her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. Madison never cried when it didn't serve her. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't say goodbye. I just opened the door and stepped aside. She walked out. 3 months later, the condo sold for well above asking. I reinvested the profit into a property I'd been eyeing for years, a quiet cabin by the lake, just outside the city. The kind of place where you could breathe without pretending. Where the silence didn't feel heavy. Daniel handled the final paperwork. Madison didn't contest the divorce. She knew she'd lose. She took the settlement, smaller than she expected, and disappeared from my life like a storm that had passed. I heard from Ashley one more time. Just a short message. She's living in a one-bedroom near her studio. Says she's focusing on herself now. Good for her. As for me, I didn't rush into anything. I spent a lot of evenings sitting on the back porch of the cabin, coffee in hand, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I took solo trips. Talked to my sister more. Reconnected with old friends, real friends. People who saw me as more than a stepping stone. And sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to that anniversary, that balcony, the glasses clinking. And I'd smile. Because she thought I was the backup plan. But I was the exit strategy. And I made sure the door didn't just close behind her. I locked it forever.